Oyono, Esono, Angue, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Equatorial Guinea. Honourable Minister, you have the floor.
Mr. President, Secretary General of the United Nations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, allow me first of all to convey to you the wishes of peace and brotherliness from His Excellency Obiang Nguema Mbasogo, Head of State and Government of the Republic of Equatorial Guinea. He sends this greeting to Your Majesties and Heads of State and Government and wishes you every success at this 74th regular session of the United Nations General Assembly. We would like to congratulate Mr. Tijani Mohamed Bande and the Federal Republic of Nigeria for having unanimously chosen you to direct the work of this 74th session of the General Assembly in this year 2019. We would also like to recognize and congratulate your predecessor, Her Excellency Madam Maria Fernanda Espinosa Garcés, and His Excellency the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, and congratulate them on the excellent work that has been done to date. Mr. President, every September we hold this meeting of the General Assembly with the intention of debating and finding solutions to the main problems and challenges affecting humanity, and, as far as possible, to make our lives and coexistence more bearable through positive and useful proposals. It's no coincidence that it was here where the United Nations was created with this goal in mind 74 years ago. But the curious thing is that the problems which negatively affect the cohabitation and humanity's existence have the same human being as author and cause. It is therefore imperative that all together we reinforce and make more effective the work of the United Nations, because to date, with its limitations, it has shown that it is the most valuable instrument that we have to seek solutions for the most important challenges facing humanity. Since it was created, the United Nations has not had one day when there have not been human victims as a consequence of armed conflicts of various kinds affecting the world. We began with the United Nations, which rose from the ashes of one of the most bloody conflicts in history, the Second World War. And that in itself should serve as an example to us and a warning of just how destructive the malevolent action of human beings can be. This conflict led to more than 60 million deaths. But it doesn't seem that we have learnt the right lessons from this tragedy. The effort deployed by the United Nations to resolve each and every one of these problems has been colossal. However, we believe that this effort cannot produce positive results if the basis for the interpretation of the philosophy of the United Nations continues to be the interpretation that existed after the Second World War. Let us look at the problem at its root, allowing for there to be fair and inclusive participation in the decision-making, and let us have a root and branch change to this archaic conception of our organization so that it can act in full solidarity in order to save humanity from the current situations of poverty and abuse, in which the majority of human beings live. In order to be more effective in the way that it works, the United Nations must reform itself in order to guarantee its own continued existence as an entity which is useful and of benefit to humanity. Ultimately, it must have the goal of becoming more legitimate, effective, and achieving greater acceptance. For example, the stagnant reform of the Security Council. It must be more representative. And once and for all, we must repair the historic injustice of depriving the African continent of all of its privileges and a permanent voice. Which it would have if it were a member of this high organ. This is still not possible. Let's not forget that African subjects occupy 2/3 of the Security Council's agenda. In summary, we will continue our struggle until we see justice. Therefore, we are not in a position to renounce the Esono consensus of the African Union, which quite rightly addresses and covers the legitimate aspirations of the African continent. The reforms must not be limited to the Security Council. The ambitious reform program of the United Nations for the peacekeeping operations undertaken by the Secretary General deserves our attention. Because if this plan is implemented, it will make these operations more effective, the main goal being reducing the fragmentation in order to provide a better response and ensure that the pillar of peace and security is more coherent, agile, and effective by giving priority to prevention and the maintenance of peace and the dividend of peace for the 2030 agenda, as indicated by the Secretary General himself. Peacekeeping operations must enjoy the strong support and backing of the various strata and partners of the United Nations. It's important that we motivate host countries and the countries which contribute troops, contingents, and funds. We must learn and fully benefit from the advantages provided by knowledge of the environments of the regional and sub-regional economies and forge closer alliances and create greater trust. There can be no doubt that in order to achieve these goals, if we were to achieve these goals, it would have a very positive effect on the effectiveness of peacekeeping operations. The economic contribution of to the United Nations is of vital importance for it to be able to carry out its work. We agree with the Secretary General in convening a summit on such an important subject for humanity as is climate change, organized during this session of the General Assembly. As we all know, climate change is a clear threat to security and for the preservation of the human species on Earth. We believe that the Paris Agreement contains the essence of an effective solution to the threat of climate change to the world. Particularly, the African continent is extremely concerned at the negative effects caused by this phenomenon in Africa, particularly when, amongst other things, it comes with armed conflicts, forced displacements of population that then become concentrated in major centers living in inhumane conditions. It's a human drama, and this was witnessed by His Excellency Obiang Nguema Mbasogo during his visit to a refugee camp in Esono in Ethiopia. Mr. President, climate change is seriously affecting the meager African infrastructures, reducing agricultural production, leading to an increase in food prices, an increase in sea level, a reduction in water resources, a reduction in the livelihood of coastal populations, an increase in wars. All of this has a negative impact on the development of our countries. The current statistics demonstrate that Africa has millions of internally displaced, a situation which is associated with the problems that I've already referred to. This must be addressed at the international level, particularly since the General Assembly has referred to the need to strengthen multilateral efforts in order to address the effects of climate change, poverty, and sustainable development. Mr. President, despite Equatorial Guinea being a great lover of peace, nevertheless, we continue to be the target of threats and attempts to destabilize the country, with the aim of bringing down its legitimate authorities in order to take control of the natural resources and the wealth which belong solely to the people of Equatorial Guinea. It's not the first time that we have drawn the attention of this august assembly to the dangers and risks which would be brought about by a destabilization of Equatorial Guinea and the grim consequences that this could have for an entire region. The evidence of economic recovery and the good prospects that can be seen in the future of my country are anathema to our eternal detractors and enemies. The unity of our people, the strength of our national institutions, and our security and defense forces, together with the cooperation with friendly countries, are vital to us, despite these disturbances. Indeed, our country has been going through an economic crisis as a result of the fall in the oil price on international markets. The new reality has led us to the need to diversify our economy and to use the benefits of the past and apply them to other sectors that are not as vulnerable to fluctuations. We've taken good note and learned lessons, and so the reforms that we are undertaking will now make us stronger, and they're helping us to make the most of the enormous opportunities and potential offered by other sectors of the national economy. Mr. President, our term in the Security Council has given us an unparalleled opportunity to make the world see that the trust that they placed in our country has made it possible for us to show the best of ourselves, and we have tried to serve the noble goals being followed by the Security Council, which is the defense of international peace and security. We are doing this with conviction and with honor. We have become more aware of the complexity of the problems of the world in which we live, and this has led us to reaffirm our conviction in the principles of international law emanating from the United Nations Charter, with our sense of independence, liberty, and justice in the views that we have expressed. There can be now no doubt about this. We are grateful to you for the trust that you have placed in us. In this regard, the Security Council unanimously approved the resolution entitled Silencing the Guns in Africa, presented by Equatorial Guinea on behalf of the African Union during its presidency of this decision-making organ of the United Nations in February 2019. From this rostrum, I extend an invitation to all those present to participate in the conference on this subject, which we will be hosting in the upcoming month of November in Equatorial Guinea. It should provide us with a platform to realistically address this serious problem, which is one of the reasons impeding the development and optimization of the enormous potential of the African continent. As we have stated on previous occasions, silencing the guns in Africa should not be just limited to an aspiration or to a longing. In addition to the possible conflicts in our countries, we are subject to and must address the almost impenetrable obstacle of our own underdevelopment. We believe that it is important to give priority to a peaceful solution to conflicts, providing the conditions necessary for development in situations of post-conflict. Some of these multi-sectoral approaches should be the path to follow together in order to achieve the necessary stability for the development of our countries. This is the spirit which guides the relations which we have with the countries with which we share borders. By signing agreements of good neighbourliness, we have standing permanent committees on consular matters and cross-border security. Equatorial Guinea has always defended the principle of mutual respect for the integrity and territorial sovereignty, mutual non-aggression agreements, non-interference in the internal affairs of others, equality and the mutual benefit of peaceful coexistence in our relations with our neighbours. In the same way, we are members of sub-regional organizations and structures, which makes evident the Pan-African spirit that guides our ideals and principles in our foreign policy. I would like to conclude my address by calling for the need to put an end to the economic, commercial and financial embargo against Cuba. And we urge a return to the positive developments that gave rise to such great optimism in the international community. I wish the spirit of peace, harmony and solidarity will guide our debates. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Guinea Equatorial for his statement.